Good evening. My name is Lindsay Sutherland Boal, and I am the founder of She Walks Canada, a movement to engage and empower sober and sober curious women, changing their relationship with alcohol. And we do that in two ways. We walk the walk and talk the talk. And tonight is a very special night. It is the third installment of the She Walks Canada 2023 author series, and we are joined by Miss Veronica Valli, author of Soberful. Veronica, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to be asked.
In addition,
nice to see a couple of people I know, so it's nice.
Oh, bless. Isn't that always a blessing? In addition to being the author of Soberful, the topic of tonight's discussion, Veronica is 20 years in recovery, and for 19 years, she has been a sober coach and psychotherapist. She is the author of other books as well, Why You Drink and How to Stop, Get Sober, Get Free. And she is also the co-host of Soberful, the Soberful podcast, and creator of many successful online recovery programs. And so, Veronica, I'm just so happy you're here. It's our first time meeting, and I'm thrilled. And so tonight, I would like to center our discussion around 5 themes, as you clearly outlined in Soberful. There's a beautiful discussion before the pillars even begin. I have so many questions just about that, but we'll go ahead and discuss the pillars of movement, connection, balance, process, and growth. And so I love the title of the book, Soberful. Uncover a sustainable, fulfilling life free of alcohol. So can you go ahead, and what do you mean by sustainable?
So it's interesting. The reason that I actually wrote the book is, so I've been sober for 23 years, and I've been doing this book, I think, like maybe 21, 22 years, something like that. And I saw in the last maybe 7 or so years, I saw a lot of kind of sober influencers pop up, and I think that's been a really great thing, that it's really social media related. You know, when I got sober, nobody was talking about it publicly. I mean, that was that isn't something you could have or would have done, and it's been really great to see people talking about their sobriety publicly and the effect that that's had. But what I also saw was a lot of people struggling, stopping drinking, doing sort of bits of this and bits of that, and not wanting to drink, but not understanding why they didn't have all the wonderful things that long-term sober people promised. And I would kind of see these posts, and I would see this stuff come up, and I think, well, that's because you don't have good boundaries. That's why you feel like that. Or that's because you haven't dealt with the resentments, or that's a limiting belief. And I'm like, people don't have a program. They don't have, there's, there was a lot of kind of stuff that was being sold that was just sort of bits of this and bits of that. And my experience has been, personally, and with the work that I do, is we have to develop ways to manage our mental and emotional health for the rest of our lives. And we need some kind of structured program to do that. So I wanted to put sort of everything that I know and I've done and I teach in one place, because I'm not staying away from a drink one day at a time. My sobriety is sustainable because I do this stuff. I do this stuff, which is personal development. It's the work that I do to maintain my mental and emotional health. And that just takes care of my sobriety. I don't think about being sober, and I don't think about not drinking. It just happens. So that's what I mean by sustainable sobriety. We want it, sustainable sobriety is beyond the year, beyond 5 years, beyond 10 years. We want to be able to navigate life, and I believe having some kind of therapeutic program to do that is the most effective way.
And I love this, because a tool that so many of us use, of course, when we're getting sober at the beginning, is counting the days. And for some people that is so effective, and for some people that is so not effective. But what I love about your approach is that it really is effective for modern women who perhaps don't identify with more traditional pathways, but are open to answering the kinds of the questions actually that you pose in the book.
Yeah, when I got sober using the 12 steps, because back in 2000, there wasn't really much else. I mean, the internet wasn't even a thing, not really. And that is one approach. And I find it personally really effective. But there's lots of people that it's not appropriate for, and there needs to be other methods. And personally, I believe getting sober is 10% not drinking and 90% emotional sobriety. And that's what I saw missing. I saw people not really understanding the emotional sobriety bit. They just stopping drinking and doing some yoga. And there's lots of things that will work in early sobriety that don't work long term. So we need the emotional sobriety part. It's not just about not drinking, it's the emotional sobriety part that's really important.
I just want you to repeat one of those things you said again, because it's a zinger. 10% of long-term sobriety is not drinking. 90% is
emotional sobriety.
10% not drinking, 90% emotional sobriety.
And emotional sobriety is when we feel comfortable in our own skins and have appropriate emotional responses to events. That's all it is, because that's why I drank. I drank because I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin and I had no idea how to deal with my emotions. So I outsourced them to alcohol.
There's so many lines in your book that should like be framed and put up in everybody's homes. And one of my takeaways, and I have to paraphrase, forgive me, but it was the idea that when we're drinking, we're reacting. And when we're sober, we can respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. One of the things that you mentioned that I really loved how you said this was what people are really saying when they say we want to drink like a normal person. Mm. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the holy grail and one of the first kind of steps in the process towards not drinking. And that's because we have our culture, I'm British, but we're not living in North America, Australia, South Africa, very similar. Our cultures are very similar, where it was given to us a belief that adults drink alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to grow up and you're going to have a driver's license and you're going to have a job and you're going to drink alcohol because that's what grown-ups do. Unless you came from a particular religion, that was just what I believed. That's what grown-ups do. And I couldn't wait to be a grown-up. And I started drinking at 14. And that's how it continued. So when you start believing, when you start thinking that you have a problem with alcohol, we know from the research people spend about 10 years in that trying to manage their drinking. And that was my belief. Like, if I can just figure out the magic formula to managing my drinking so I can drink and get all the good stuff that I believe alcohol brings me without the consequences that are actually really impactful on my life. So that often when clients come to me, we go through the grief process in letting go of this substance. And that's one of the desires, is I just want to drink like a normal person. Well, here's my argument. That's a very subjective, like, what's normal? Because I believe, certainly in British culture, and I see it here as well, North America, that we have normalized abnormal drinking. So we've normalized it. And all my clients, Lindsay, look like you. All my clients are women of a certain age who look nice, who have careers, went to college, all that kind of stuff. And from the outside look normal, but inside feel very different. So there's this subjective, normal drinking is just very subjective. For some people, that's binge drinking at the weekend. That's what all their friends do. That their friends all have jobs and cars and go on a nice holiday. So that's normal drinking. For other people, it's having 2 or 3 glasses of wine every single night. I work hard, I take care of the kids, and I finish that's normal drinking. So it's just very subjective. So it's just too wishy-washy, whatever. But the reason that we believe that is because we are absolutely committed and convinced of the belief that alcohol is the best way to get to the land of fun, excitement, belonging, connection, relaxing, and rewarding ourselves. So if I was a normal drinker, I want to keep all those things. And who doesn't want those things? Those things sound great. Who wants to life without those things?
Right.
So that's why we want to be normal drinkers, is because we want to keep membership to that land. Because, again, faulty belief. We believe if we don't drink alcohol, we will not have membership to that land. And that sounds like a pretty grim existence. And then, of course, we know that actually you can get to the land of fun, excitement, belonging, connection, relaxing, rewarding yourself sober, and it's better.
Yes.
But so it's a massive, like, emotional, it's a rearrangement. All sobriety is a shift in perception.
Yes. Read the book, ladies, read the book. And this is just the introduction. And so one of my favorite things is we want to drink like a normal person. I want to drink with no consequence.
Yes.
And oh my God, I had to read that over 5 times because it just hit me like a gong. Yeah, it's just so powerful. Okay. I love this part too. The myth of the 2 camps of drinkers. And I'm just going to read a little excerpt from this because when I read this, I'm like, these are my people. Okay. There's a myth that there are only 2 camps of drinkers: those who can't handle it, full-blown alcoholics, and everyone else. The majority who can handle it just fine. In reality, many, and this is in italics, many people drink to excess who don't fit the definition of an alcoholic, but they definitely face the consequences: hangovers, embarrassment, depression, anxiety, spending too much money, loss of opportunities, or the dullness alcohol brings to your mind and soul. We use our spin doctor skills to turn our consequences into humorous stories to entertain our friends, while burying shame, embarrassment, and self-disgust. So if that isn't problematic drinking, what is?
So here's the thing about an alcohol problem, and this is what gets many people. So we ask the wrong question. First of all, we say, is my drinking bad enough, right? And we can always find someone who's worse than us. We'll go, oh, I'm not as bad as them, I must be fine. But an alcohol problem shows up on the inside years before it shows up on the outside. So, you know, getting a DUI, blacking out, falling over drunk, not picking your kids up, getting fired from jobs, all of those things are outside things that you and other people can see. Now, if you're doing that, of course, alcohol's problematic and you need to do something about it. But what most people don't realize is it shows up internally years, if not decades before, which is the shame, the self-loathing, the fear, the anxiety, the hangxiety, resentments, not liking yourself, feeling uncomfortable in your own skin. Nobody can see that. So we all do very good jobs of trying to mask what's actually going on the inside. So typically my clients have felt like that for years and years and years, but on the outside, have the job, never been fired, have a nice car, go on a nice holiday, whatever. So people on the outside go, oh, you look fine, your life looks fine, you know, you've got all the things, you've done all the things. And nobody can see what's happening on the inside. And eventually, if we keep going, it will show up on the outside. Eventually, those things will start happen. For some people, it happens in their 20s. For some people, it happens in their 60s. But it's the inside part that people can't see. And that's how we're able to rationalize that we don't have a problem. And I mean, I've worked in this field for over 2 decades, and it's really incredible to watch the acrobatic rationalizations that we're capable of to justify that we don't have a problem and when we don't want to give it up.
Yes. Yes. Moving on to pillar number 1, movement. Which of course everybody in this group will hear with love particularly. But what I love about what you talk about, and something we certainly talk about here at She Walks Canada, is that you speak of movement in 2 realms. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so movement is the first pillar of sobriety. So it's number 1 about moving your body. And we just know the research is so overwhelming. The best thing you can do for your mental health is just move your body. And I'm not an exercise specialist. I'm just like, walk, whatever, just move your body, because the way that the chemical effects on our brain, the serotonin, it takes, I think, up to a year for your brain, your gut, your energy, your sleep to all get back to a normal place. And exercise is just one of, and everybody can exercise. It doesn't matter how old you are, what's going on, everybody can do something, So that's one of my non-negotiables for working with me. I want people to be, and again, you don't have to be a CrossFit champion, just go for a walk and listen to a podcast. But the other thing, there's lots of great ones. The other part of movement is about being aware of what you're moving towards. And I felt when I was drinking that I was like this little boat on the ocean without a rudder. I just sort of, I didn't have a plan. I didn't life kind of moved me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know where I wanted to be in 5 or 10 years. So it's about being purposeful about what you want to move towards and what you want to move away from. Because sobriety, what happens when we have an alcohol problem is we leave ourselves by degrees. We abandon ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did things and said things that are not in alignment with my values and who I am, yet I did them. And I had left myself.
Mm-hmm.
Sobriety is the journey back to yourself. So it's about moving back to yourself, which is about moving back to your values, really. It's about who you really are, because there's only one life. And we can't live it at the expectations of other people or trying to be what other people want us to be. We just have now. And I want to be fully present, and I want to be who I really am, not this fake version of myself that I became.
I just want to repeat that. We have one life, and we don't want to live it by the expectations of someone else. Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And I want to say that sounds wonderful, but it's not easy.
No, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, it's not always
we're
easy.
going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Just in the interest of time, we need to move on to pillar number 2, connection. I love what you say about vulnerability, and especially for what I have found within She Walks Canada, is that for a lot of the sober curious folks, so those that are aware that something's going on, but perhaps not quite ready to make that move, or people who are in the first year or 2 of recovery, vulnerability is really tricky because we are in the process, as you say, of coming back to ourselves. So just to go back to the basic here, what does it mean to be vulnerable? And you're saying that the path to connection is through vulnerability. So my question to you is, how do we do that? Why is it so essential? And I know that you're coming at this from the context of what you said about you mentioned that being vulnerable was a risk that you were not willing to take.
Yeah, so connection, we all human beings all need meaningful connection to survive. And we kind of know this about children and infants, right? It's attachment. Like without it, they don't flourish. But that remains true for however age we are. I think one of the defining characteristics of an alcohol problem is loneliness. And I think, I mean, loneliness almost killed me. And I had friends and I was around people, but I always felt like I was behind a glass screen and they were one side and I was the other. Like I'd never felt that I could really connect. And it's because of vulnerability. There is only one pathway to the vulnerability that we crave, and it's through there's only one pathway to connection, and that's through vulnerability. And what I mean by connection is it's meaningful connection. We need people who know our souls. And that's not, we need friends and we need community, but we need, and that's not going to be a massive group of people, but we need to be able to have meaningful connection with people. And being vulnerable is, I find it terrifying, because that means I have to show you what's inside of me. And I thought what was inside of me was so ugly and disgusting that if you saw that, you would run away. And I want, I've worked with lots of people, and I'm going to say we're all very unoriginal and common garden. And then what's inside of us is the same. It's fear, it's feelings of not good enough, it's low self-worth, it's all of that. And it's taking risks and being discerning about who we take risks with, about talking about what's really going on with us. And there's nothing like it. I mean, it's like, for me, I was like a starving person who was finally being fed when I finally was able to be real. It's about just being real, right, with people. And that's why sober groups are so great, because you don't have to pretend here, right?
Yeah.
Like you're here. So we know that things haven't been great for you at different times. So that's why, so, that's taken away. It's not the PTA. It's not, we can be real here. And places like this are a safe place to begin to take those risks.
And I think it's so important too, that oftentimes in these kind of sober groups, they are a group of strangers. And it was very strange to me at the beginning. Well, how am I going to go to a group meeting where I don't know anybody and share stuff? But the thing is, that's where the magic happens, is because you're in a room of strangers who have similar lived experience. And there is such a sense of safety sharing those vulnerable moments, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. And then, that connection is life sustaining.
Life sustaining. Yes. So you just tapped in it a little bit there, but I wonder if you would explain a little bit more on the 3 levels of connection and give an example of what it is you're talking about there, because it's so valuable. I'd never thought about it quite like that before.
So we need 3 levels of connection to not feel lonely. So we need to have intimate relationships, which is people who know our souls. That doesn't necessarily mean a romantic partner. It can be a best friend or a mentor, but it's people who really know us. Then we need friends, people we can also be real with, and then we need to be part of a community. And we need all 3 of those things to be fulfilled for us to not feel lonely. For example, when I was living in England before I got married and I met my husband and we were dating, I had all 3 of those. I had community, I had lots of friends, and I had my husband, and I had best friends. And then we moved to America and I got pregnant, and I didn't have a community and I didn't have friends. And I had my husband, who was wonderful, but I felt very, very lonely. And I had to work really hard on building those relationships with people where I was geographically. So it's actually about all of those, having all 3 levels to feel the connection that we crave.
And these 3 levels of connection are not for people that are in recovery. These are for human beings.
Yeah.
And
Everybody.
this is something that I found so powerful about your book. I've never heard about these concepts said in this way, because it's about this life-sustaining emotional health that will last us our entire lives.
Yeah, and again, this isn't just for people who have a substance abuse issue. This is for everybody. All human beings have to do personal development, the development of oneself. And I didn't know that, and I certainly didn't know how to do it. Right. So that's what my program is. It's personal development. And that's what will keep us sober, but that's what everybody has to do.
We need to move on to the 3rd pillar of balance. And I love this. And this, it's not your, I'm going to quote you, please. It's not your job to make other people happy. And so why is setting boundaries so hard, so new, and so triggering?
So when I work with people, that's one of the first things that I teach typically is boundaries and balance. So whatever the question, balance is always the answer. And balance is, it's about balancing our needs, our work needs, our family needs, our health needs, our spiritual needs, whatever, according to our circumstances, and our circumstances will always change. So how COVID was the best example of that, right? Sure. All of a sudden everything changed, but we still had needs. We still had to work. We still had to exercise. We all of a sudden did that very differently, right? But those are still needs so circumstances will always change. And when we are not in balance, that we will start feeling uncomfortable in our own skins. And if we feel uncomfortable in our own skin, our brains will eventually look for relief. And usually something external like alcohol. But to have balance, in order to have balance, you're going to have boundaries. Now, for me, that was life-changing. I didn't know there was such a thing, let alone how to have one. But just having boundaries will change your life. Boundaries keep the good in and the bad out. And boundaries are my yes means yes and my no means no. So I think culturally as women, we're very conditioned to be pleasing and accommodating. And what mattered to me, my belief system was very messed up. And I believed you liking me and you approving of me was the most important thing. I could not bear it if I thought you didn't like me or I'd upset you or something. So I would just twist myself up like a pretzel, trying to, yeah, Lindsay, I'll do that. Yeah, no problem. Or like, yeah, I like that movie too. And completely betray myself because I believed that your approval was more important than mine. And what I realized after doing this work is I got to a certain point where I have to sleep in my head tonight. Not you. I have to sleep in my head tonight, which means I have to show up in the world in a way that means I can do that, which means sometimes I have to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you there. Or, yeah, I didn't like that movie that much, but glad you enjoyed it, whatever. I have to be able to be true to myself. And that I have to have boundaries to do that. And that means, this is the hard bit, when I have boundaries, not everybody's going to like that. Because most people, I was a people pleaser. So when you change and you start having boundaries and start being more true to who you are, There's people around you who may not like that and may be displeased. But boundaries is what enables me to sleep in my head tonight. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And when I read the Thieves and Liars section, when I got to the Thieves and Liars section of the book, I had to read it 5 times because I didn't know what you were talking about. I couldn't understand what you were saying. And then it clicked. And that very day, I found myself in the unique situation where I needed to enforce a boundary. And I thought about thieves and liars, and I implemented this strategy. And when I did, I got off my phone call and I thought I was going to die. Right. And then the response I got back, I don't have words for it, because it was everything I ever needed to hear. And it absolutely revolutionized the way that I will use boundaries moving forward. Can you please tell us a little bit about this section?
Yeah, there's a lot to this. But so when you're a people pleaser, you're just saying yes and agreeing and going with the flow, even though you may not want to do the thing, or you can't do the thing. So first of all, that makes us liars, right? If you say, can you help me, Veronica, on Saturday? And I go, and inside I'm like, no, I can't, I don't want to, or whatever. But I go, yeah, no problem, Lindsay. Yeah. Right. I become a liar, because that isn't what I want to do. And generally what happens is, when I used to agree to stuff like that, I would, Friday night, I'd just send you a message, go, oh, Lindsay, I think I've had something a bit dodgy to eat. I don't think I'm going to make it. So I've got out of the thing that I didn't want to do, but I've also been dishonest, and that doesn't sit well with me. But here's the big thing. When I agree to do something I don't want to do, if I said, no, Lindsay, I'm sorry, I can't help you on Saturday, and you're like disappointed or upset, or like, oh my God, I was totally, like, Veronica always says yes, I really thought she'd be able to come and help me. When I say yes and I don't mean yes, I've stolen a growth opportunity from you. Because when I have a boundary, people have to respond to the boundary. Personally, I love a no. I'm really happy with a no.
Yes.
Because then I know where I stand. What I can't bear is a wishy-washy yes. A wishy-washy yes is not useful to me. If I have a kind of gut feeling that maybe you'll turn up, maybe you won't, that just makes me anxious. I might, when you say no, I might think, oh, bum, what, but then I can go to plan B. Like I find no's really helpful, because I just know where I stand. So when we are constantly trying to please other people or say yes when we mean no, we are not only lying, we're stealing growth opportunities for them. Because when I say no to you, you're going to have to go to your plan B and figure it out. And you know what? Who knows? That might be something, an experience, a growth opportunity that you never would have had if I hadn't have given you a firm boundary.
Yes. And the result of doing this work showed, and I talked to this individual a couple of days after that, and they said, in that moment, you taught me how I was going to treat you. And I went, I sat and went, high five. Like it was so important to me because that's when I realized that this is what boundaries are.
We teach other people how to treat us by our behavior.
Yes.
And then we get angry with them for treating us in the way that we've taught them to.
Say that one more time.
And then we get angry with them for treating us in the way that we've taught them to. So what happens is we say, yes, we'll do it. Yes, I'll help. Yes, I'll do the thing. And then we feel exhausted and put upon and taken advantage of and underappreciated. And we get resentful and angry at those people because we don't feel that we've been, people haven't valued us. But we were the ones who said, yes, I'll do it. Yes. We are the ones who are teaching other people, yeah, I'll do it. So if you're going to say, yeah, I'll do it, then great, I'll let you do it.
On that, you beautifully describe resentment. Can you?
So resentment is part of the process pillar. Process work is, in a nutshell, it's revealing ourselves to ourselves. And this is part of an ongoing practice. So this is the work that I have done for over 20 years. Revealing ourselves to ourselves, because we never stop growing. We never stop changing and developing. We're not stagnant. So the resentment work for me is the biggest part of any sobriety program, because this is where I see people fall down all the time. Resentment work is about, it really creates a shift in perception. So most people just stay stuck in the story of, you did this, like, let me tell you what she did. You're not going to believe what she did. Oh my God, can you believe that? And we tell our friends, right? You're not going to believe what Lindsay, she did that. Oh my God. And then all our friends are like, oh my God, that's just right. And if I just stay in that place, all that happens is I just stay activated. I just stay angry and pissed off and in my story. And you know what? That doesn't benefit me. Resentments are the free drunk. If I'm trying to stop drinking and on Monday my boss is just pisses me off, is it okay to swear a little bit?
Yes.
So I'm just like furious. I can't believe how unappreciated I have just got the worst bot, and I'm just fuming all week. And I'm telling my coworkers, can you believe what happened? Like, and it gets to Friday, and my coworkers are like, we're going to happy hour. Are you coming? I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yeah. I after the week I've had, after how my boss has treated me, I deserve a drink. Like, I really do. This is the problem drinker's holy grail, is I want to drink and be drunk, but not for it to not be my fault. See, let me tell you my story of my terrible boss. You would drink too if you had a terrible boss. So I'm rationalizing and justifying that it's other people's behavior that has led me to drinking. It's not my fault. It's my boss, it's my boyfriend, it's my partner, it's my kids, it's the this, it's the that. That's why I'm having drink, because I deserve it and need it, and everyone knows that that's justified. It's just a irrational rationalization of our drinking. So that's why resentments are the free drunk. So if I work it through to the end, and I have a whole process that I use with people to do that, what is revealed is actually there's a different way of looking at this. There's it might be, well, I've never set boundaries with my boss. I've been available at 11 p.m. at night. I've taught him that that's okay. Or I've been offered other jobs, but I've been scared to, there's like, actually there's stuff I could have done here way back that could have made this relationship differently, and I didn't do it. So resentment work for me is the absolute tempo of doing recovery work, and then it reveals to us our limiting beliefs, and we all have limiting beliefs, which is just the story you tell yourself about yourself, and we have to work on that, because a lot of us have negative stories. My story was, I'm not good enough and I won't be loved, and I believe that to be true, like I believe the sun would set tonight. Those were facts for me. Those limiting beliefs just shaped my whole life, and now I think that's ridiculous. I know I'm good enough, and I know I'm loved, and I feel really comfortable with who I am. But we have to do the resentment work to reveal our faulty belief system, so we can then begin to unpack that. And that's the emotional sobriety bit.
I'm going to be going back and rewatching that section a couple of times. Okay. So at the beginning of the process chapter of the book, we talked a little bit about this in our emailing back and forth. Would you read the beginning of that?
Oh, yeah. The beginning of the process.
Yeah. So page 127 to 128, when it ends with, it's freedom of our minds.
Oh, okay. Ooh, the whole thing. Okay.
Well, you choose. Dealer's choice.
Okay. All right. I want you to know that you matter. Everything you've gone through, everything you've felt, all that has made you who you are. I want you to know that all of that matters. Now I can tell you this, and you can say, yeah, that's great, thanks. But what I'm going to guess you'll do next is dismiss it, or think it's irrelevant, or worse, that it doesn't actually apply to you. Here's why I don't want you to do that. To really move on, we have to matter to ourselves. Otherwise, we're just getting in our own way. Process work is about validating, honoring, feeling, processing, and accepting what happened in the past so you can move on. Because what happened to you matters. Our past shapes our present. None of us can escape that. The reason we have to do process work is that it's hard to make sense of things when we are in the middle of them. We absorb the feelings and messages without fully understanding them. Process work can only be done on reflection and in hindsight. But instead of reflecting on our process, why did I feel that way? Why did I act that way? What do I think that means about me? We distract or numb. Process work is about understanding our feelings and emotions, and to do that, we have to be open and vulnerable, which is why we resist. If all we are doing is distracting and numbing, then we are not growing emotionally the way we are capable of. We will be emotionally stuck, getting older but not wiser. The work of really knowing ourselves and healing our past is universal. Everyone has to do it. However, the motivation to do this work really only comes from pain. I think distraction, busyness, and substance abuse are all methods people use to avoid self-reflection, which is why I want you to see this as a gift. If you're changing your relationship with alcohol, then this is an invitation to process and let go of behaviors and feelings that no longer serve you. People talk about freedom a lot in relation to sobriety, and I want to be clear about what that really means. Of course, it applies to never feeling like you need or want to drink, but the greater implication is the freedom to access all our bandwidth. It's freedom in our minds.
There is so much in that. Something that I see all the time is this idea that, well, these things happen, but they don't matter. Or he was just being the way that he was, and that's the way he is. Or she was just being like that, or this is just the job. And we totally diminish our own experience. And so I love how you open this chapter with "you matter" and then go on to explain it. It's very powerful.
All of us, our past shows up in our present. All of us are shaped by our childhoods, and some people never escape that. Like what their childhood experiences and the meaning they created is what dictates the rest of their lives. And part of when I work with people is, you know, when I kind of get their history, is like that when you were 12, that was a really big thing. That really mattered. You know, it's almost like with my clients, it's like if their best friend was telling them this story, they'd be like, oh my God, oh, but it's us. We're like, oh yeah, you know, we just kind of dismiss it. But a lot of, I feel that to really kind of process what happened to us and get to, because what our past can be transformed into wisdom. We can't change what happened to us, but it can be transformed into wisdom. And what a lot of it just needs is it needs to be out in the open. It needs to be validated. Your pain, your wounds need to be honored. Like that mattered, what happened to you. That was a really big thing. And because we're the only person who can heal ourselves. And that whole process can be incredibly freeing and liberating.
There's right after that, pretty quickly after that, you talk about the 95% subconscious mind and the 5% conscious mind. And I want to see if I've understood what you're saying. So you're saying that 95% of our actions are subconscious.
Yeah.
And only 5% of what we do is conscious.
Yeah.
This blew my mind. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we all live our lives on autopilot, and it's because it's energy saving, right? We've all, it's just, if you think about driving a car, right? When you learnt to drive, we all had to do it consciously. When I go back to England, because we drive on the other side of the road and I drive a stick shift, I'm driving very consciously. I'm thinking about it. We don't think about it, right? We just do it. That's because it's energy saving. You can't be driving consciously, like I have to signal left and I have to turn the wheel like that. We can't do that. So our brains, we are bombarded with data, especially when we're young, particularly when we're young, and we're trying to make sense of the world and our place in the world. And once we've figured something out, it just goes into our subconscious mind. So for example, it might be you had a parent that shouted at you all the time, and that the meaning you created would be, there's something wrong with me, I must be bad because my daddy is always upset with me. And so your subconscious mind is like, okay, so there's something wrong with you, you must be bad. That just becomes programming. So you could be a very qualified, experienced, badass adult, and you're in your office and you hear a man shouting and you become 10 again. It's like, oh, I must have done something really bad, they're going to fire me, oh my God, right? So it's helpful that, look, it's just like a computer. That's the best way to describe it. It's like if my operating system is faulty, I can bang away at the keys as much as I want, but it's not, the operating system's faulty. And our operating system is often, when we come into sobriety, faulty. So our operating system is not going to say, by the way, some faults here you need to look at. That's why we have to reveal ourselves to ourselves in order to go, you know what, believing that you're not good enough has a massive effect on the choices you make and your behavior. Maybe you need to change that, and maybe you'll get different results if you do.
And it's a different results. And so I think that's the thing, is that the 5%, we need to so actively, with intention, choose not to drink and choose something different, because we've got 95% of our brain that is so used to doing something else. Yeah.
So for example, crap day at work, I feel really bad because I have a terrible day at work. My subconscious mind would go, if you have a glass of wine, you'll feel better. And then I'm having a glass of wine before I'm even realizing I'm having a glass of wine. So that's why early days of sobriety do feel so hard, because we're just breaking this enormous amount of programming and habitual behavior. So if my limiting belief of not being good enough, like I couldn't have articulated that. It was more of a feeling. I just felt it deep inside of me, and I kept getting evidence to prove that would be true. What kind of relationships do you think I attracted into my life when I believed I wasn't good enough and worthy of being loved? Did I attract men who were nice and appropriate and treated me well? No.
Right.
When you don't believe you're good enough, you like attracts like.
Right. One thing that you said that I, again, I'm going to frame, put on my wall, is you will survive your feelings.
Yeah. That was a big fear. That's true of many people. I was terrified. I felt like it was a tsunami coming towards me and I wouldn't survive them.
Yeah.
And that's why we run and numb, is because of that belief.
Right. I'm looking at the clock. Okay. Moving into the fifth pillar, growth. Can you define ego and the role it plays in our growth?
So the fifth pillar is, this is a fundamental rule of life. We are all being called to grow. That's just, the reason that you're doing She Walks Canada, right, Lindsay? That at one point, that was a burning desire inside of you, right? You thought, what if, could I? And then it's a thing. It became an actual thing. That was a call to growth. We all have, everyone here has had that day where we woke up and go, I do not want to drink. I will do anything to not drink. I want to stop drinking. That's a call to growth. As long as you have breath in your body, you will never that will never stop. Whether it's like a call to growth to write a book or to run a 5K or to meet your neighbors or whatever. So here's the dilemma. When we are being called to grow, it's usually to do a new thing. It's a new place. It's an area that we haven't been before. It's something we don't understand. Like I've done tons of these kind of things. But the first time I did it, oh my God, like what if I'm going to mess up? They're going to think I'm stupid. No one's going to come, right? Because it was a new thing. I just kind of show up, do it, and it's fine. But it wasn't like that at the beginning. So when we are called to growth, what happens is we always meet resistance. And resistance comes in the voice of the ego. It's the voice in your head. We all have it. We're all narrating our own lives. The ego's job is to keep you safe. And it believes the best way to keep you safe is if everything stays familiar. It doesn't want anything to change. So what happens is you don't want to drink. I'm not going to drink. Maybe you go through a few days, you get some books and podcasts and you're feeling kind of like day 10, you're feeling really good. And day 20 comes along and you have a bad day at work. And that voice in your head starts going, you're not that bad. You could just like have 2 drinks. No more. That would be fine. You just need to cut down, just drink 3 days a week. And that ego voice, once it kicks in, it starts making us feel really uncomfortable. And what it's trying to do is just pull us back here, just pull it. Oh, it's so nice and comfortable. Like, you can manage. It's going to be fine. You'll just finish too. And when that kicks in, if we don't know how to navigate past resistance, inevitably the ego will win and we'll go, you know what, it has been 4 weeks. I'm sure I could just manage 2. And then we drink. And the same outcomes happen. And we wake up going, how did I end up in this place again? So one of the things that's really important is that voice in our head. It's just part of our psychology. It's actually there to serve us if we can balance it and manage it. And it is just simply a life skill to navigate around the ego. So for me, it was just really about being more or less being aware, like, oh, that's why I feel really uncomfortable about this, because it's a new thing and the ego is kicking in. And the way I get through it is, thank you. I don't have time for this today. I'm going to do the next right thing, even though it feels uncomfortable.
Beautiful. We need to conclude. Would you please read that that bit, not the chapter, just the bit about our life's work?
Yes. Our life's work. The work of emotional sobriety lasts our lifetime. We are our life's work. We get ourselves right first, then we can be of use and help to others by just being ourselves. At the time of this writing, I'm over 20 years sober. I don't do this work so that I don't drink. I simply never think about drinking or not drinking. I do this work because of the rewards it brings. The personal development work I've been describing has not only enabled my life to expand, it has helped me deal with the challenges I faced. I'm someone who has always wanted more. It's just that the stuff I want more of now is mostly good stuff. Sobriety will help you become a better version of yourself. We are all becoming, and we never really stop. It's an ongoing process. There is no destination, only the journey, but because there is always more to be. Each stage of life is an opportunity to become more if we allow it. Allowing is the optimal word here, as we are all capable of getting in our own way. This book was never about trying to persuade you to stop drinking. It was about facilitating your awakening to what is possible if you change your relationship with alcohol and introduce simple practices to make sobriety sustainable for you.
Veronica Valli. Thank you
so much.